So we are going to start the meeting now, but I would like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us today. And good day, everyone. So thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today. My name is Sihle Boyo, and I'm the project manager for the African Climate Action Partnership. I will be facilitating today's conversation around agricultural policy and institutional arrangements to enable smart rice, yes, to enable smart rice. So to kick things off, I will go through today's overview, what we have, and then we'll just take it from there. So firstly, we'll have a presentation from our side, just speaking on AfCAP and the community itself, and then it will be followed by the institutional insights presentation, which will have, the first one will be by Dr. Jimmy Lamo, then will be followed by Mary, then the third one will be it will be followed by Rosemary, right? Then towards the end of that session, we are going to have a Q&A session essentially. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box, or during the Q&A session, you can just raise your hand and ask. And yeah, that's how we're going to do the Q&A session. And then right after the Q&A session, we'll have our plenary session where we have 3 guiding questions, and we're gonna it will be based on a Mentimeter, right? But I'll explain that part when we get there, and then that will be followed by our closing. So we can start on just a brief explanation about AfCAP, which is the African Climate Action Partnership. It is a global so it operates under the umbrella of GCAP, which in full GCAP stands for Global Climate Action Partnership, and it's a network for peer learning, technical collaboration, and information exchange. We support the implementation of ambitious-led strategies and national determined contributions. We are a country-driven, demand-driven, or we use a country-driven, demand-driven approach to help build practitioner capacity. Thank you. So we have different communities of practice under AfCAP. So the first community of practice, it is the African Mini Grids Community of Practice, which is our AMG Corp. And the aim under this community of practice, it is to support a key network of stakeholders in creating and enabling an environment for mini grid deployment across Africa. We also have the livestock community of practice, where we enhance capacities for the design and implementation of long-term low emissions, climate resilient development pathways in the livestock sector across Africa. Then we have the soil organic carbon community of practice. And the aim under this community practice is to raise ambition in the presentation of SOC, or soil organic carbon targets in future, and NDCs and LTS of African countries. And the last community of practice, and the reason why we gathered here today, is under the rice community of practice. And the aim under this community of practice is to support low emissions and climate resilient paddy rice productions in Africa, and having collaborative network for key players to interact and share learnings. Next slide, please. So what the mission is under this community of practice, it is to facilitate greater collaboration between key stakeholders, institutions, and countries in the rice sector to promote low emissions and climate resilient rice production across the continent. Next slide, please. Is that, yeah. And the objectives are, we want to promote knowledge sharing and peer-to-peer learning exchanges amongst key stakeholders, programs, and national institutions in the rice sector. We also want to encourage and support African climate champions and best practices in the rice sector. We also support the capacity development for the design and implementation of low emission and climate resilient rice production in Africa. Next slide, please. So the progress we've made so far since the beginning of this communal practice, we've organized design workshop, which was virtual. We've supported a rice sector expert to participate in the LT-led training and Africa Climate Week. We've also organized a webinar on exploring collaborative pathways. We have also organized an in-person event in collaboration with APRRG and SRI 2030. And we have an establishment of expert panel to support planning. Next slide, please. And we have also organized the Anglophone Regional Rice Forum, which was last year in Kenya. We've launched a call for funding for baseline emission data collection. We've also done some parallel session at GCAP, GCAP at the global event, which was last year. We've hosted a Francophone Rice Regional Forum with Africa Rice in Cote d'Ivoire, which was early this year. And we've also sponsored researchers to go attend the training that was in the Philippines on GHG emissions on rice systems, basics of mechanisms and standards for measurements, and that was also early this year. We've also organized and convened a rice technical exchange between TARI and key delegates from Kenya and Liberia in Morogoro, which was in May, I think. And we've also co-organized a regional institutional exchange between Africa Rice and our rice seed funding recipient institution for agriculture research at Ahmadu Bello University in Nigeria. So what we have on our upcoming or on our desk, we'll have one more strategic visit that we're planning or we're still discussing, and we have upcoming virtual meetings. That's all about what we have. So I think the next person that will be speaking on institutional insights, and they will be speaking on the role of research in shaping climate smart policy in the rice sector. And I'll hand over to you, Dr. Jimmy Lamo, to go ahead with your presentation. Yes, Dr. Jimmy, you can start. We can also share from our side, Dr. Jimmy, if you like, because we already have your slides. Are you still there? You're on mute in case you're speaking.
Muted now.
Yes, now we can hear you, and then you can be on presenter mode, and we can see your screen also, so you can be in presenter mode and you can start.
It's not yet clear.
We can do it from our side if you like.
Yeah, I think there's a conflict. You can do it from that side. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're showing it from our side.
Okay.
You can just say next when you want us to present the next slide.
Correct. My name is Jimmy Lamo. Thank you for the elaborate overview you gave about the program and also the ongoing meetings that have been taking place. Mine is to bring insights on the role of research in shaping climate smart policy in the rice sector. And it's a two-way thing, policy to research and research to policy. Next. My presentation is going to have three main components, but of course, introduction, research areas, climate smart technology deployment, a research case, and then acknowledgement and conclusion. As an introduction, it's important to have evidence of climate change, and that requires research. And to have that, it helps us to address the issue of sustainability for increasing farm production and income, strengthening resilience to climate change and variability, and the key one under flooded conditions, which is mitigating the contribution of agri practices to climate change through a reduction or removal of GHG emissions. So those are the key intervention areas that both research and policy tends to target. Next. Rice has been implicated as a chief contributor in the emission of CH4, contributing up to 7%. And methane emission is key due to anaerobic actions that take place in anaerobic soil. But nitrous oxide emissions also take place, which is associated with inputs, especially the nitrogen-based fertilizers. When it is not fully decomposed, then you get nitrous oxide emission, which is a contributor to emission of the gas. Then the residue management, which includes burning of residue and opening of large chunks of land, are contributors and threats to climate change. So the key activities in production are methane emission, nitrous oxide emission, and then residual management, which research needs to address and take to policy. Thank you. Next. Now, research needs to address an ongoing research. Number one is on undertaking climate change impacts. We need to identify the extent of climate change in the rice sector. And this goes along with prediction and also earth designing of elements that bring problems in the rice sector. But we also need to understand what we prioritize in the rice sector, and it helps us to target appropriate policies. This is a big research area, which if not well taken, it can be misunderstood, and we go to policy when we have nothing in our hand, especially extent and prediction of what would take place in the future. The next one, which is what we have invested time in most, is developing climate smart technologies and practices. And the key one, which we spend a lot of time on, is genetic improvement, developing varieties that are drought tolerant, resistant to diseases, efficient in use of nutrients. This helps in addressing climate smart by getting varieties that does not predispose the environment to climate vagaries. And this can only be done if speed breeding is associated. And speed breeding is a new set of tools that make us target and attain the products that we need timely. The other one is optimizing water management practices, research into water saving technologies, developing varieties that are waterlogging tolerant, promoting agricultural practices, especially direct seeding. Rice is a versatile crop that's adapted to upland conditions and also to rainfall lowland conditions, flooded conditions. So we need to develop those that require less use of flooded conditions, and direct seeded rice is one of them. Conservation of agriculture, then also non-tillage practices, cover crop, integrated nutrient management system. All these give a balance in the supply of nutrients. When it comes to conservation agriculture, one important one which we are already working on is development of perennial rice, the varieties that when you grow, you don't disturb the soil much, and you continue to harvest 2, 3, or 4 times. And in that way, you are taking advantage of simulation of the ecosystem, where the root system and the microorganisms are intact for about a year or so. And that comes with research and recommendation. Next. Okay, we also need to invest in informing policy design and implementation, especially in understanding the impact of different interventions, going into recommendations that are workable and that can be adapted, and also understanding whether those policies are effective, because we have a number of policies that are hanging, but many of them may not be quite easily adapted. So it is through research that we look into those policies and redesign them. International cooperation helps us in tapping experiences and benefits from across countries. And I know this program is helping us a lot. There's a lot of benchmarking that is studied, getting experiences from other places and walking the journey so that what you are doing in your country, you can jumpstart based on experiences in other places, leave alone bringing resources together. Then facilitating collaboration and knowledge sharing. Part of it is what we are doing right now. If high-end science is not unpacked into usable form, then policymakers will not take it and it will remain in the shelves. So a research that has been translated into use will benefit climate smart adaptation. It should be packaged in usable forms. Then effective climate smart policies tailored to specific contexts is what we require, including scientific publication, policy briefs, and stakeholder workshops. And I see our program here taking us to that, and that's important. Next. Now, climate smart deployment now, therefore, requires us to have support and financial incentives from governments, good land tenure system, capacity building at different levels, and of course, research, which is the core thing. We need infrastructure at different levels and good monitoring. Without public awareness, there's no way we can claim that we are bringing climate smart technologies. And that has been a big weakness to a number of us. We bring statements that are loaded, that are not well explained. For example, we can say 20 meters or 1 kilometer away from a swamp, that is a way to make sure that the swamp is intact. But if you don't give awareness to the community, they see that you're dissuading them from what they should benefit from. Next. Now, I'm bringing a case, two cases. The first one is a stress-tolerant rice varieties, that is drought, salinity, submergence tolerance, that has advantages of mitigating GHG and climate resilience by developing salt-tolerant or drought-tolerant varieties. In Uganda, we have released a variety in a number of countries in Africa, which is called WDR7. This is an hybrid that gives more than 9.5 tons per hectare, but very efficient in utilization of nutrients. You can grow of water in particular and other nutrients. Therefore, if technologies target efficient use of nutrient, then it is smart in effect, and its utilization benefits society and the environment. The other one is in integrated pest management. We all know that pests and diseases are with us, and any practice that leads to deployment or opening of large area under common variety or certain genetic background of a variety predisposes it to a boom and bust cycle of pest outbreak or disease outbreak. So we need IPM system that make us manage pests. And in this way, we will reduce the use of chemicals. And therefore, we bring crop rotation, we bring varieties that are adapted to lowland condition. For example, bringing a soybean that are adapted to irrigated condition, which rice teams should start having them. So that rice, in rotation to rice, there should be a flood or lowland adapted or irrigated soybean varieties. There's even simsim. So we need to think across the spectrum of rice. And in that way, there'll be holistic use of the environment. Next. I would like to appreciate my work organization, NARO, and the partnership we have had and the Methane Hub for giving me opportunity to provoke us into discussion that make us guide this program to a level where 10, 15 years from now, we have the real impact to the community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jimmy, for sharing that insightful presentation on the role of research in terms of shaping the climate smart policy. Just a quick reminder, please do not forget to, or don't be shy to actually introduce yourself in the chat box. On here, just say your name and where you're from and maybe the organization if you like. And if you have any question, please feel free to also drop those in the chat box. Right. So the next person who's going to be presenting for us is Dr. Mary, and she'll be presenting on agricultural policy and institutional arrangement to enable climate smart rice. Take it away, Dr. Mary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isile, and also thank you so much. That presentation by Dr. Lamo has opened up, of course, part of what I will be mentioning. So next. This is my outline. I'll be talking about, I'll give a bit of introduction on policies and institutions, and then look at the gaps, then what are the roles of institutions, what approaches can we use to scale up adoption, and what really drives adoption. We look at the challenges and recommendations, and then I'll finish. Next. So by way of introduction, I would say that policies and institutional arrangement also involve combination of instruments. What institutional frameworks do we have in place? How are stakeholders engaged towards that environment for climate smart adoption? Because as we have heard from the first presenter, research, of course, there is so much that the research has done towards this climate smart agriculture in general, and also specific for rice. But how come adoption is not scaling up as we would wish? So policy coherence, some of the considerations, we need to look at, do our policies address issues of incentives or disincentives? How much as a policy address payment for ecosystem services to encourage adoption? What about social protection and the regulatory frameworks? These are some of the areas which we covered at the policy. Institutional and support mechanisms. Institutions, we need institutions that encourage stakeholder engagement, or knowledge sharing, as has also been mentioned in previous presentations. There is a lot of need for capacity development. This is picking up that. Financial mechanisms to encourage adoption. Research and development, I don't need to say much because Dr. Lamo has already laid it down, and we need monitoring and evaluation. Also, don't forget that gender equity, because of the effect of climate change on how it affects different genders. We need to address the inequalities, address the issue of access to resources, information, and also decision-making power. Next. Right, what are some of the gaps? We realize that although research has already given us some areas and technical innovations, policy inconsistencies can lower adoption. Also, limited knowledge among farmers about limited access for adoption and upscaling. There is also inadequate monitoring and evaluation framework. I realized that from the existing policies, as research is going on, these 4 areas will continue to be very important. Policies will change based maybe on research, on new areas that come up. So we'll continue to need to invest more in this climate smart rice. Innovations will continue to grow. Farmers capacity, therefore, we need to be built. And the photos down there are showing one of the learnings that we have done somewhere in one of the schemes on AWD. And also we have set up those experiments, I mean, to encourage like farm demonstrations on encouraging an AWD. Next. Now, let me see what are the key institutions that are necessary to increase adoption of these climate smart rice. So under policy, we need policy and regulatory bodies. Key among them, the Ministry of Agriculture, which is responsible for setting up strategies for adoption. But then even as the Ministry of Agriculture is responsible for that, the Ministry of Environment is responsible, taking the example even here in Kenya, of setting up mitigation targets and then integrating the mitigation for rice into national climate action plans. They are also responsible for enforcing compliance where necessary. In our case, I think we are not lacking in policy on adoption. The Ministry of Environment sets up those national climate action plans, and every minister cascades the areas. And we have climate change units cascaded in each ministry. We also realize research and development is very important, as has been mentioned, because they are responsible for those varieties, mitigation techniques development, and also the monitoring and evaluation tools. But then even if research has done all that, if extension and advisory is weak, who are responsible for training farmers on mitigation and adaptation practices, then we realize, like Dr. Jimmy was mentioning, that this research remains on the shelf. So currently, I think extension and advisory is the key, and I think a weak point for adoption. More so also financial and incentive mechanisms. We need institutions that are also leading here, so that maybe what are we doing about carbon credit programs? Issues to do with the subsidies to encourage adoption, grants. And I say that financial incentives still remain low. And that's why also we might see adoption also remaining a bit low. Next. Thank you. This is an approach. What approaches can we do to scale up adoption of climate smart rice? So research and development will continue to be very important. After which farmer training and advisory services will need upscaling through different platforms to make sure that farmer awareness is enhanced. Partnerships between public and private, so that we can, have a bigger impact. Because we know when public and private is being encouraged all over, that public-private partnerships for most of the interventions. But we also need to create value. All the actors will need to see value in why adoption is important. We also have an approach towards private sector initiatives. We were reading somewhere, I was reading about some initiatives in Asia, where private sector was uptaking rice from farmers who had adopted AWD. So that also encourages more farmers to take up these climate smart rice practices. So we'll continue to have more of that private sector. Next. Thank you. And then I was thinking aloud, what would encourage, what can drive adoption? The picture there is showing one of the tools we use to encourage AWD on how to monitor when to water and when water you need to flood, when you need to remove, alternate wetting and drying. Factors such as cost effectiveness of adopting and accessibility, plus what are the perceived benefits. These are areas that will continue to encourage adoption. And we need to, if we can incentivize these practices through targeted support, like through subsidy programs and educating, that one will encourage widespread adoption of the climate smart practices. Next. Thank you. So in my conclusion, I'll say, what are the challenges? We have low awareness and technical capacity among farmers, inadequate funding and infrastructure, fragmented coordination or among institutions. Even now, especially from research to extension to farmer, there is need to strengthen that mechanism. And then a few recommendations on strengthening. How one is to strengthen collaboration, invest in farmer training, small pilot projects. How do we upscale them to be national programs? And then integration of GHG mitigation into agricultural subsidy and insurance schemes. Next. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation on the institutional arrangements to enable climate smart rice. If anyone has questions, please do formulate questions, actually, if anything, and don't forget to just pop them in the chat box for Mary as well as Dr. Jimmy. So up next, we're going to have Rosemary from Erie, who's going to be presenting on the importance of building a stakeholder alignment across rice systems. You can take it away, Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation from African Climate Action Partnership. We are very honored to be able to share our experiences here. My name is Rosemary Murori. I am a plant breeder by training, but also working for the International Rice Research Institute based here in Nairobi. And I'm going to talk about the importance of building stakeholder alignment across rice agri-food systems or rice systems. Next slide, please. Of course, since I didn't know the audience, I decided to just have a slide on, my institution. So like I mentioned, I work for Erie. Our headquarters is based in the Philippines. We have different offices in Africa. So we have an office in Burundi, in Kenya, Tanzania, in Mozambique, in Uganda, and our newest office in DRC. And also we work in Asia and Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. So the issue of really building alignment, institutional alignment, and stakeholder alignment is very, very critical. And especially when we are talking about a club that feeds 4 billion people, which is more than 50% of the world population. It's grown by more than 1 million farmers, 1,044,000 farmers, which is 25% of the world farmers. You can see the annual value. In terms of land use and water use, you can see rice consumes a lot of water. And that's why this conversation is also very important, especially now that you're talking about issues of climate change. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned there's really no alternative to building partnerships and alignments, because such a club that has a big contribution, especially in food security, there's no one institution that can do it alone. There are so many challenges, resources are limited. The challenges are also not only many, but they are also so diverse. We know there are different national institutions that are working on rice and agri-food systems. We have CGRs like Erie, we have Africa Rice, we have different private sectors, we have different scaling partners that have different mandates. And then that's why it's very, very critical for us to have the alignment as different institutions. So we also need to look at where do we have comparative advantage over each other. of course, we need to respect the mandates of the different institutions. So at least we can be able to work together, form alignments. Of course, Dr. Mutembe has mentioned that there are challenges, but we know something is happening. There's something we can do even within our institutions to really strengthen our alignments and partnerships so that at least we can be able to deliver in a better way. And like I mentioned, the issue of comparative advantage, there is no institution that can do it alone. And like the saying goes, the whole will be greater than the sum of its parts. So coming together is really making sure that we can deliver in a stronger way. Next slide, please. So just showing in terms of ERI and also where we work. So in terms of research, even if, we do a lot of research, we need different stakeholders that can be able to give us intelligence from the market. So because the thing is, like, even when we talk about research, who is it that we are doing this research for? When you're talking about climate smart research technologies that you're developing, who is it? We need feedback from the market. Is it the smallholder farmers? Is it the private sector? Who are the consumers? Because at the end of it, we are not doing research for ourselves. So we need the different people from the market team to give us information on what research and what technologies fit which group of people. So in terms of breeding, we also have, like I've mentioned, the trait discovery, the trait deployment team, the crossing work that we do. But all these depend on what information we get from our end users or end consumers. Also, another area of work, and I'm just bringing this up so that when I'm talking about, stakeholder alignments, you can see we have alignments from, depending on the area of work, we have different types of stakeholders, and then alignments need to be formed depending on the different area of work. So another area of work that we do is inclusive delivery. So what is it that you're going to be able to make sure that technologies don't remain in the shelves, like Milia said. So we are working with different partners to make sure that we can be able to scale our technologies and they can be able to reach out there. Also, we've realized that we need to share resources. Like we are saying, no one can do it alone. We can't have ERI is not a one-stop shop, or even any other CG center is not a one-stop shop. We need to keep sharing resources with different institutions so that at least we can be able to look where is the strength, what else which institution do that they can be able to deliver well. And also we need the different enablers that help us be able to achieve the different areas of work. Next slide, please. So in terms of market intelligence and why institutional alignments are very, very critical, because we need to make sure that the technologies that we deliver out there, they are what is demanded, like I've said. They are gender intentional and they are also impactful, because also we don't want to deliver or develop a technology that can be able to change the lives of the people. And also with the market intelligence team, they really help us have a forward looking, because we know that what might be demanded now, maybe 5 years down the line, might not be demanded, because like when you look at rice, the consumption has really increased because of many reasons that we might be aware of. What is it that we can be able to get from the intelligence of the market team that we can be able to incorporate in our current technology, so that even 2, 3 years, 5 years down the line, they can be able to be consumed or demanded. And also it's very, very important for us to get the feedback from the different teams, especially the market intelligence, so that we can see how do we understand the behavior dynamics, so that it can influence a greater adoption and variety turnover. So you can see on the left-hand side who the different stakeholders that we work with the different national agricultural research systems and extension systems, NGOs, seed companies, agribusinesses, smallholder farmers, donors, and investors. So at this level, we try to build alignments with the different partners here, and also the scaling partners, because like we've mentioned, these technologies, we do not want them to just sit on the shelves. And just to mention, of course, we have the Global Market Intelligence Platform, which is available and free online, where or the information about the market information that we have for the different crops. And this not only for rice, you can be able to get it out. So you can be able to get it up here in the global market intelligence platform. So that in case you want, even a donor want to invest in a certain crop and in a certain market, they are looking at what is the area, what is the capacity, what are the traits that are needed in this. And this is available for the different partners who wish to look at it. And the information is very, very useful, especially when we are targeting our breeding and technology development activities. Next slide, please. So in terms of breeding, very, very critical, we have our stakeholder alignments, because like you're talking about these times of climate change, you need climate resilient varieties that are not only nutritious, but are also what is demanded by the market. The issues of climate change, drought has become, very common of late. We have issues about salinity. Like these photos, you can see the top one was taken in Tanzania. The down one was taken in Kenya, in Olabura. And also you can, sorry, you can see, like we are saying, this really need concerted effort, because there's really no one institution that can be able to do it. And also looking at rice is a crop that, like my Jimmy and Miriam have said, is a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So in terms of breeding and research, we are looking at really how do we bring different stakeholders, how do we make alignments, what can which institution do and do it better, so that at least we can be able to achieve one goal. Also, in terms of malnutrition, we know now malnutrition has increased. Also, we want to make sure that at least the technologies in terms of the products we develop out there, they are not only to reduce food security, but they are nutritious. Also, in terms of increasing income opportunities, we know that some areas like those that are adversely affected with salinity, like some parts of Tanzania, for instance, or even some parts of Kenya, we have seen farmers just abandon the area because they cannot be able to grow anything. So if we can be able to develop different products, and especially from a variety point of view, we can be able to increase income opportunities for these farmers. The issue of climate adaptation and greenhouse gas emission cannot be underemphasized. Next slide, please. In terms of scaling, our other area of work, of course, the issue of where do we position the different technologies that we need, where are they needed? Like Jimmy mentioned about the dry-seeded rice, direct-seeded rice, we know it reduces greenhouse gas emission and also increases income, in that is able to reduce the labor, and also, especially now with the reduced amount of rainfall, we can be able to have crops that we can harvest 2 weeks earlier. So where do we position these products? Do we have the seed available? Also, in terms of deploying, when you look at deploying, it doesn't only mean that making sure that the different technologies in terms of varieties are available, but are they available at the same time, because at the right time? Because we also want to make sure that maybe when our consumer of technology, especially the smallholder farmers, want to plant a certain variety, the seed is available at the right time. Also, in terms of deploying, even advising the seed producers, like the private sector or the seed merchants, looking at which digital tools can we be able to use to be able to predict demand, so that at least they can be aware of how much seed are we producing for this area and at a certain time. Another thing, we are talking so much, of course, about adoption and monitoring and evaluation. We are also able to track with our different stakeholders how, as this, for instance, technology or variety, like maybe AWD, how has it been adopted? And this is also very, very important, because we can also be able to give advice to policy for them to be able to to implement the different technologies that we develop. Next slide, please. Giving an example, this is a Kenya example, looking at how alignment with different stakeholders have led to the adoption and availability of a variety that is called Komboka, that was released in Kenya. You can see down there that this variety was released in Kenya in 2013. But it is until 2019-2020 that this variety got to the farmers, and we were able to have the seed producers produce only 2 tons of seeds. But you can see between 2020 and 2025, there has been more than 400 tons of seed that has been produced. And why has this happened? This is because there has been a lot of alignment with different institutions in Kenya and partnership with different institutions to make this happen. Or else Erie and Karo could not have made it alone. So we have MRGM that has come through, we have National Irrigation Authority, we have different private sector, we have different NGOs that are even, some are women that are producing seed, and also we have the smallholder farmers. So you can see this Komboka was lying in the shelves, and imagine the loss that was really for the farmers, because the thing is they couldn't be able to have the seed to be able to plant it in their field until 5 years down the line. After, no, not even 5 years, 10 years down the line is when the seed got to the farmer's field. So that's what we're talking about. These alignments are very, very critical. Or else we can still do our research. Yes, the research is good, the technologies are good, but if we don't form alignments, looking at what is the comparative advantage of each institutions, then you're not going to make impact. I think that's next slide. I think that's my last slide, just showing about capacity building. And you can see on the left-hand side, this is the drum that initially MRGM was using to trace the seed. And down there, you can see that is where the bucket Carlo in Kimbos were using to dress the seed. And imagine by the time they dress enough quantities of seeds to be able to deliver the farmers with this kind of technology. But when they got a seed dresser, they were able, the work that was really being done, the drum that was producing 1 ton was able to produce 40 tons within the same time, 8 hours period. So you can see alignments, the role they can play, especially in making sure that technologies that we develop are disseminated. And that's all. Thank you so much. It's my last slide. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, for that informative presentation. So now we're gonna go straight into our Q&A session. Do we have any questions maybe for Rosemary, for Mary, as well as Jimmy right at the beginning of the presentation? I see Coffee has his hands up. You can go ahead and ask your question. Just unmute.
Thank you so much. Really insightful, presentations that raise a lot of critical issues. If we are to be able to scale climate smart rice on the continent. And I just want to make the point that we are really grateful to South North, Roy and the team for putting this together, and we are really proud to be associated with this initiative. And just wanted to make a few points to buttress the very good presentations that we've had this morning. I think we would all agree that in the region, research, the gap in research and policy is really wide, and rightly so. Our last presenter, make the point on alignment, how important that is, and the example that she shared with a solution that was already available, but it took 10 years for that solution to reach the stakeholder that is supposed to deploy, that solution. And so the point I just wanted to make, to reiterate these points that have been already made, is the need for us to, also take a critical look at advocacy, right? Now, the first presenter made a point on generating the evidence through research. And in most African countries and in research institutions scattered all over, there are a plethora of evidence that is sitting on shelves. But there is no advocacy to present this evidence to policy for that to be embedded in strategies for rice development. So I think that is an area that we should really, really be focused on, making it a deliberate, effort to present this evidence, because, as you know, the main objective of agriculture development on the continent is increased productivity, and rightly so, because there are a lot of mouths that needs to be fed. It is really important. So there should be some deliberate, effort to embed some of this, thinking in the development of the, productivity strategies that is so key and central for Africa. So this is just the point I just wanted. Advocacy will be key if we will be able to get alignment we want, if we want to get the mainstreaming of some of these strategies in agricultural development plans. So thank you once again for putting this together. And I may have to leave on the hour, and I'll be looking forward to getting the recording to also share with colleagues in Thailand. Thank you so much, South-South Northern African Climate Action Partnership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kofi, for that wonderful remark. And yeah, also we would like to thank the Methane Hub as well for the support and the work that we do. So I'm just gonna quickly go to, again, cycle back to the Q&A session. Is there anyone who has a question or maybe a comment or just like an add-on on what has been presented by our presenters? Feel free to raise your hand. Okay, I'll maybe just ask a follow-up question. Maybe Jimmy might have touched on it in his presentation, but I just wanted to ask, in terms of researchers, right? When you spoke about the role of research, in terms of research, how can we make researchers, or how can researchers ensure that the findings that they get are effectively translated into actionable policies, especially in countries where the governance capacity is limited? Jimmy, did you get that? That was for you. Is he? Can you hear me, Jimmy? Okay, I don't think he can. Does anyone have a question for Rosemary or for Mary? Okay, I'll post my question in the chat box, and then Jimmy can just circle back to it whenever he can. So I think we can just move on to the next part of the webinar. Oh, there's a question by Samuel. Please feel free to unmute and ask away.
Yes, thank you very much for putting together this wonderful discussion. I'm Samuel Anga from the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic in Morocco. And I sort of have some few questions to the presenters, and any of them could try to maybe see how we can address some of the issues. The first question I have has to do with we are doing a lot of research on policy, trying to connect research and policy to achieve smart practices. But what are we also doing about political will? Because without political will, we cannot really achieve the policies we want in terms of implementing these smart practices. So our research should also be sort of targeting political will in policy. So I'm just trying to understand what some of the activities that we are also doing in terms of directing political will, especially on the African continent. Then the second question I have has to do with the second presentation. We are talking about private sector involvement. Like simply, I just want to know, how can the private sector be involved, like in all this process of smart practices and then smart options for the right sector? And the final question I have is for the third presentation, just trying to understand from like an experience point of view, like some of the difficulties in managing stakeholder alignment, especially when it has to do with differences in interest for the various stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your question. Does anyone want to take that question from our presenters? I think that's the first question, because the second question is directed to our second presenter.
Maybe I can start. I can just give my few comments first on private sector involvement. And then managing the stakeholder challenges when managing stakeholder alignment. Yeah. So in terms of like what we do for us in terms of like private sector involvement is like when you're developing technologies, we get them involved in terms of like coming to look and see what we have. And also we are working a lot, like I can give an example of the Kenyan sector. So Caro, what they have done with Advant and Seed. So for the varieties that you have released is to license them. And then when they license them, they can be able to get some they get the seed, they get some breeders in, and then they can be able to produce the certified seed. And then once they sell, they give some, some little money or loyalty to Caro. And this is very critical because this money can be plowed back to research, especially for the national system. So that's what we do in terms of private sector involvement, is involving them early. Another way we do is even licensing them our varieties or our premium varieties, or in terms of hybrid, we have the hybrids, we have the HRDC that deals with that, working with the different private sector, and then they can be able to have them access to our technologies, especially the varieties. Challenges when dealing with the stakeholder alignments, they are there, yes. The expectations sometimes are quite, huge, and especially sometimes these institutions, we are viewed as donors, which is really takes so much, time to explain to them that, these alignments, these stakeholder alignments, they are for all of us to benefit. And, when they look at us like a CG Center as a donor, then it really doesn't work very well. So they are there, but also we have had, especially in countries where we work, a lot of government support. And also like in Kenya, Mutembe is here, Jimmy work with you. So it has been really getting the buy-in from the different people or the scientists that we are working with directly. But of course, the challenges are there, which we try to address case by case. But the biggest I've seen of all is really very high expectations of us. Yeah. I'm very sure that Jimmy and Mary can add. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I like the way the discussion is going, and in terms of appreciation of the gap between research, policy, and action. And there is a question here on how do we bring on board political goodwill? Because yes, an example has been given on a variety that sat in the shelf for more than 6 years. I think because of this lack of advocacy. And thank you so much, the presenter who said we will need to invest in advocacy through engagement of the various stakeholders, more so the political goodwill, like what we are doing here, the planning and implementation. We also have meetings with the political class. We love to invite them during our planning process, during the various stages in the implementation of all the programs. Let them understand why it is important to change or to adopt what we are talking about. Because actually it is difficult, like places like in Kenya, where we have 2 levels of government, each with different mandates, and sometimes one level is not agreeing with the other one. And so you have to find somewhere where you can meet in the middle so that we agree this is the way we are going to move. We at the national level, I work with the Ministry of Agriculture, and we do policy. Our function is policy and capacity building of the extension. But then the actual extension is by the second level of government. So sometimes you cannot spend so much in capacity building of extension officers, but if that is not, they are not facilitated to take that to the farmer, then it becomes not a very successful event. So we are looking at places where we also bring on board the leadership within the county level of governance, so that we all understand why we need to implement certain policies and certain things. So I believe the same way that we may not, researchers are just researchers in my view. Theirs is to look at what is best, innovate, and put it somewhere. We need somebody who can do advocacy for whatever which has been released from the research level. And somebody else also, or the same communication team that can also take this through the political goodwill. Because yes, that is why we may have things lying in the shelves if we don't find implementation within the political class, because we have to bring on board what is their interest and what is our interest, so that both of us now can agree on how we are going to move forward. Something on private sector involvement, besides what has been mentioned by Rosemary, we also need private sector to invest, because sometimes if we can create value for investment in large scale rice production and these practices that we want adoption, private sector is always willing as long as we can demonstrate value. And then the other way is something uptake of rice. They create markets for this rice that we have produced under this smart, climate smart. So you encourage, enter into contract, they can enter into contracts with those farmers. Those two is what I think could help us also bring on board more private sector involvement towards adoption of climate smart rice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the answers and for the discussion. Jimmy, do you have anything to add maybe on what has been said so far? Jimmy, you might be on mute because if you are speaking, then you are on mute. Okay, I'm not sure. I think there might be some technical issues for Jamie. So I think I'm not sure if the second question, let me know, Samuel, if everything has been answered or all your questions have been answered, but I'm not sure if the question on private sector's involvement has been answered. Let me just give me a thumbs up if you've got all your answers. Yeah, and then in the meantime there was a question, I think it might be for Jimmy, but feel free to take it if you feel like you can also give an answer on this one. Oh, he says it's been answered. Thank you. So there's a question that was asked, Mutafu, I think, who asked, I would love to find out what extent is land ownership covered in research. So I'm not sure if Mary or Jimmy, you want to maybe just touch on that one. Daniela has a question. Okay. Then there's another question from while Jimmy, Mary, and Rosemary think about the land the land ownership question. There's another question that was asked by Daniela talking about community mobilization. I believe that Ministry of Population should be engaged throughout the entire process. True, just like the other stakeholders. I totally agree with you on. They also play like an important role in this whole process. Do Mary or Rosemary, do you guys have anything to add on the land ownership question? Okay, I don't. Okay, for now, I don't think so for now. So if you guys have any answers or anything to add, also feel free to just like pop the answer or your add-ons into the chat box. I think for now we'll just head over to the plenary session. Yes, I see your hand is up, Akim. I think just can go ahead and unmute yourself and speak. Yes, Akim, you can go ahead and speak.
Yes, I'm following the discussion keenly, and I've just noted we are talking about things like community mobilization, communication, advocacy, commercialization, and the like, but we are not really saying who should do that. Because if we are expecting all of this work to be done by the research institution, that is kind of out of their scope and their specialization. So in terms of engagement or specialization, my question, do we have any institutions that are specifically mandated to undertake these activities? Because really, I think this is work that is beyond the scope of our research institutions. Thank you.
So I'm guessing, Akim, that was a comment, right? Is that question
Yes, I
directed
think
to you? Okay.
No, I think we can just keep it that way as a comment.
As a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a beautiful comment or insight as well of things that we should be asking ourselves in the entire process. I think doesn't look like we have any more comments or questions. So we will head over to the next part of the session, which is like a discussion and the plenary session where we have just like 3 guiding questions. And we will just share with you just now. It's on Mentimeter and it's on the screen. You can just also it's on the screen 1, 2. We've also included in the chat box where you can just click on the link. So you have different questions. Just quickly clicking on it as well, where we have asked each and one of you. So it's asking if we can scan the QR code. Can you guys see the QR code? It's not showing.
Not
No.
from my end. Personally, I can't see it.
Okay, just 1 second. Okay, in the meantime, while we fix that, no? I think I will just ask the question. It's been reshared in the chat. Just quickly going back to it. Yeah, it's asking for please join by scanning the QR code. There is no QR code. So in the meantime, I think what we can do, we can just do it the olden day way. So the first question in the plenary session is, what are the main policy or institutional barriers to CSA uptake? You can maybe just have one word, what comes to mind, but I'm also just adding the question in the chat box. So according to your experiences, what do you think the main policy or institutional barriers are to CSA rice uptake? Feel free if you don't feel like typing or you just feel like you want to speak on this. Then I'll also add the second question that we have shortly. Yeah, so we also have it on the screen, what the main, what you think. Okay, I think we have one answer there. Okay, coming through. Okay, you can answer as many times as you want, actually. You're not limited to just answering once. Okay, so we have improper packaging of research results, result into policy, which I believe is true. We've just received poor extension. There is also one in the chat box. There's poor policy implementation and strong political interferences. And we have lack of subsidies to organic inputs and poor extensions. And there is lack of research investment, what really rice needs. There is lack of funding to extension institution. And then in the chat box, feel free to also use the chat box if you're not able to use the Mentimeter. And then Akim said, I think this was cool. Yeah, human and infrastructure capacities, limited financing, which is always a problem. Then we have limited access into info and extension. And then Daniele spoke on insufficient financial mechanisms. And then we also have, so on the Mentimeter, we have lack of advocacy, which has already been mentioned. So it's a very important aspect to look at. We have insufficient financial mechanisms, which we have already. And then lack of proper post-Harvard processing. Then there is lack of coordination and lack of linkages of institution inconsistencies in the CSA education. Daniela also added inadequate coordination among different stakeholders, which is true. I think, so there's one, which is the same thing that Daniela added on the chat box. Right. I think we can maybe move on to the second question, which is what are the most important roles that technical and research institutions should be playing or should play when it comes to promoting CSA rice uptake? Feel free to just pop in your question in the chat box, or you can use the Mentimeter. Okay, we have no dedicated coordination institutions. And if you feel that you want to just add on to the point that you've added here, please feel free to raise your hand. If you feel like you want to elaborate more, please feel free to raise your hand and you'll be given the platform to elaborate more. Then there is viable vulgarization. Wait. There's novellas technologies. Then we also have we need to provide technical expertise. Yeah. Oh, technical expertise, and then there's generating demand-driven rice technology. Then there is generating. So we have that one already. Okay. And then so one person says that we should be translating research findings into cost implications for lack of action. We also need to lead implementation process. And someone added and said we need to promote transdisciplinary research in CSA technologies design and uptake. I'm not sure if we have any more answers. Then we need to be developing evidence through research. And then we also need to be disseminating the new technologies. I think we can, you can maybe share the next question, please. So the last question is, according to your experience, or according to you, essentially, what do you think are good practices, or what are good practices that exist for sectoral coordination? Any answers on the last question where we were asking, what do you think are maybe good practices for cross sectoral coordination in the CSA RISE initiatives, just to maybe explain it differently? Yeah, here you can just like, I think one word, and if you feel like you want to elaborate, then you can go ahead and just raise your hand to elaborate. But I see there is community of practice, we have shared benefits, and we have set up COPs or communities of practice, and other good practices that you guys have mentioned is transparency, which is a big one. Community of practices coming up again. Then there is share the benefits, uniformity, having a dedicated coordination. I think this one links to maybe setting up a community of practice, because that's where you can coordinate all of these the practices, and you can just discuss them and have them dedicated or streamlined in a way. Do we have any more good practices that you guys feel are good for cross-sectoral coordination in the CSA RISE initiatives? Akim, do you want to explain because I see in the comment section you said having a dedicated coordination mechanism such as is it Denise? I'm not sure if I'm explaining it or saying it correctly, but do you want to just like unmute and explain what that initiative is? Or
Yes, I would be happy to explain that.
please.
We often talk about coordination, and I think we all agree that it is quite important. But no one is willing to put money on the table specifically to facilitate that coordination. And we expect the researchers from universities or research institutions like Caro to do the coordination. And that becomes difficult because that is not their mandate. And if they are doing it, then they'll be doing it as a part-time thing. So we need to have institutions that are specifically looking at issues to do with coordination, institutions that can link different actors, policymakers, researchers, and the business sector deliberately. So in short, all I'm saying is that we need deliberate action or intentional action to facilitate that coordination. Within the GHG space, I've given an example of the Quinisa initiative within Southern Africa, which is doing that, collecting information on what innovations are available, what research is being conducted, and sharing that information with other people or other institutions that they have in their database and think they would find that information useful. So in short, the point is that we need to put money on the table to facilitate the coordination or cross-sectorial initiatives that we are talking about.
Yeah, I agree with you. We have to be not just in talks, but we have to be intentional about making it work. Thank you so much, Akim, for sharing that. I am not sure if anyone has any questions or has anything that they would like to add as in any part of the presentations from today. And if not, maybe we might just want to wrap up. But I would like to just before I wrap up quickly, would like to ask that we will be sharing the poll just now with everyone, just to for some feedback on how the webinar was and maybe what should be maybe added going forward. Just like 1 minute or 1 minute of your time, and then we will just close the meeting quickly. Will be shared in the chat just now, or in the, yeah, it will pop up on the screen, and I'm waiting for it to pop up. Yeah, so it'll pop up, yes, and then you can just, and then you can click go ahead and rate us or rate the webinar itself just for your feedback. Yeah, so the poll is just quick and easy. You can just literally just click on your screen and then click next. Then you'll see it goes from 2 out of 5, then 3 out of 5, all the way to the 5th one. I think we will wrap up the meeting, but I would like to just say thank you all for joining us today and joining the conversation on climate smart rice. Thank you to our speakers for making the time, and thank you to everyone who has, sorry about the noise in the background, but thank you to our speakers who made the time, and thank you to everyone who was part of the conversation. Hopefully, this having such dialogues will strengthen the awareness around, or the awareness on existing policy efforts and institutional coordination challenges going forward. But thank you all for joining us today. And in terms of communications, we'll all be sending out communications after this meeting. I think there was someone in the comment section who asked about the soft copies. Yes, that will be sent out, and we'll be in touch with you, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you.